All right. I hear the recording noise. That means we're set to go. Welcome, everyone. This is our back to school parent night, mid-September. So just getting into the school year. We are going to have a number of parent nights later in the year as well. We'll point out one of those, which is going to be a test prep night. That's in about a month. So we encourage you to check out kind of a series that we're running this year that we're really excited about. But for today, we're here for back to school. Meaning we are going to be talking about a few things. And first, let me introduce our presenters. We've got Daniel, who is our San Jose office director. Dipti is our Los Altos office director. And then my name is Peter. I'm our regional director in the Mid-Peninsula area, which is up by Menlo Park, Woodside, San Carlos. So we've got a little bit of coverage up and down the peninsula for you today. Goals for the evening. We really want to get across this idea of back to school. So we want to think about a little bit, what does that mean planning for the school year? Daniel's going to present a little bit about goals for students and what to expect for students at this time of year, as well as throughout the full school year, as we kind of produce a plan for each grade of students. Mostly we're going to be thinking about 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so our high school kids. Dipti's going to talk a little bit about study skills with the idea of setting a good path for students, helping them start the year off right, what to do about any slight missteps in the fall. And in terms of subject matter, mostly we're going to be thinking about academics. I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about APs. We'll be thinking about study skills, which is a huge part of what high school students are really working on at this time of year, or we would like them to be working on collectively as a group, as they kind of learn to learn. It's really big for us. And then we'll be talking just for a couple minutes about test prep, about for credit courses that we can offer as well, and then about college counseling, which is a newer service for us, but one we have quite a bit of experience with and one we're really excited about. Alrighty, Daniel, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And hi, everybody. I'm Daniel, the director of the AJ office in San Jose. I'm a tutor myself. I've been working at AJ for about 7 or 8 years and worked with hundreds of students on academic and test prep. So I want to thank you all for zooming in tonight. I'm excited for us to connect. And I hope you'll leave this presentation with some ideas for things you can do to support your students now and in the future. The beginning of the school year, it's an exciting time. Students have leveled up to a new grade, which sometimes comes with new or renewed motivation in school. Of course, strong intentions on the part of the student are not necessarily enough to create substantial change to the habits and behaviors that really impact learning. So, having some external support and accountability, via teachers, parents, peers, tutors, Post-it notes, whatever works, can make a huge difference for student outcomes. So what that support system can look like is really different for every student. Each student is an individual with their own unique needs. At AJ, we're a team of professional tutors who always collaborate with parents and students to create customized learning support. In order for us to plan effectively, it helps to consider your students' unique strengths, challenges, and goals. No one knows your students better than you do. So with that in mind, I have a little reflection activity for all of you to do right now. Yes, I am going to make you write some stuff. So while we only have a little bit of time here to brainstorm briefly, my hope is that this writing exercise will be a conversation starter at home, between you and your students. So please take a moment right now to grab a pen and some paper, or open a digital notepad to write your ideas down. I'll give everyone a few seconds to get set up. I actually want you to grab some paper to write stuff down. I'll just hum the ABCs quietly while you grab something to write with. Okay, we're back. I have a almost 2-year-old daughter. Actually, today's her 22-month birthday. Not sure who out there is still keeping track of your kid's age in months. But yeah, she just started nursery school. The first thing she has to do when she goes in is, wash her hands and sing the ABCs. So it's kind of just in my brain. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone's ready. I'm just going to present 4 simple questions about your student, things that I, as their tutor, would want to know. For each question, I'm going to set a 30-second timer, which should be enough time for you to jot down a few quick thoughts and not keep us here all night. In addition to writing down your ideas, feel free to put something in the chat if you all want to interact. So, okay, here comes the first question. So, successes. What has worked for your student in the past? Can you think of a successful learning moment or situation for your student? What supported them with that? Was there a special resource they used? Did they have any special, connection to the subject matter? So I'm going to start the 30-second timer now. Ready, set, reflect. Okay, that was 30 seconds. I'm assuming you all are writing. Hopefully we'll move on to the next one. For every success, there is a struggle. So what does your student find most challenging? Think of a specific obstacle to learning that your student has faced. What's a growth edge for them? Starting the timer now. The timer, the sound I wake up to every morning. And with those, specific successes and struggles in mind, we can move to the next slide. And now it's time for you to write down your goals. So take another half a minute, write down some specific goals that you have for your student this school year. Ready, set, go. Okay. Hopefully you're able to come up with a couple of things. I'm sure you've done some sort of reflection activity like this before, but I think it's a good tone setter for the school year. So finally, we'll talk about the students' goals. Now, their goals may or may not align with your goals for them, but what do you think your students' goals are? So we'll take another 30 seconds, last time, to give you a chance to predict your students' goals. All right, timer start. Okay, how did it go? I really can't monitor the chat and talk at the same time. I'm not sure if anyone's put anything in, but I do encourage you all to share some ideas if you want to. And by the way, like if you don't know exactly what your students' own goals are, that's okay, right? High school students are becoming experts in their own lives. As tutors, we like to interview students about their learning process in the first couple of tutoring sessions. And of course, we're happy to share what students tell us with parents. But I encourage you to schedule some time with your student this week to ask them what their goals are for the school year. And all of this is very helpful for tutors to know when creating an academic or test prep plan for your student. Every student is different. We want to customize what we're doing for each individual. Our priority as tutors is to meet students where they are and support them on their journey to academic success, whatever success looks like for them. Also, if you have these goals in mind, when you call AJ to find a tutor for your kid, that'd be really helpful. We also have a parent goal form that we send to parents of academic students that you will now be very prepared to fill out. So, just to put a bow on this goals activity, here's some quotes that I pulled from emails that parents have sent me over the last year. I'm sure many of you wrote down some similar things. But I always remind students that there are two primary goals for their academic classes. Obviously it's to get a decent grade, but I'd say more importantly to learn the material. Students have told me a bunch of stuff in terms of what their goals are. Satisfying curiosity. A lot of parents and students are working on building independence for their students at this age in high school. Increasing confidence, improving at test taking. And there's a lot of students we work with too that are really just here purely for enrichment. Getting ahead of what their class is teaching or exploring applications to what they're learning in school. So it can really, be a wide range of what people are looking for when they come for tutoring. So we just want to make sure that, the tutor, the parent, the student, that we're all sort of working as a team to help support students and that we're all, in alignment with where we're heading. Okay, so that was the goals part. Here's our roadmap to high school. You're very excited. So let's say a couple things first. While each student's journey is different, like we were talking about, there are some important landmarks for all college-bound students. We've got almost 2 decades of experience at AJ working with students in the Bay Area, so we're familiar with a lot of the common expectations and obstacles that your high schoolers may encounter. Student success is, like I said, a team effort between students, families, teachers, coaches, tutors, peers. And so here's a little bit of guidance for you for how you can support your students as their priorities shift throughout high school. So, feel free to sort of find out where your student is right now. I know a lot of this is not groundbreaking, but I did want to highlight specifically the support stuff. So I'll just go through each grade, kind of quickly. So in 9th grade, students are brand new school, exploring interests, joining clubs, balancing extracurriculars with, their classes. But it's really a crucial time to develop good study habits. So for the things you can do to support them, I do strongly recommend you get acquainted with your students' online portal, whether that's Canvas or, PowerSchool or whatever it is. But establish a routine with them for checking in on how they're doing. I think setting the expectation early in their high school career that it's going to be a partnership, right? Their job is to learn and ask for help. And the grown-up's job is to support them however they need it. And then discussing their goals, strengths, struggles, and resources. You've got a head start on this because we just did a goal reflection activity. Obviously, you can do this sort of goal setting at any grade level, but it's a good thing to do when students are just starting high school. Students might not be aware of all the resources they have available, like peer support, or we do professional study skills tutoring as well. 10th grade, sort of just checking in to make sure things are on track with the study habits that they've been working on. The classes are getting harder. They might be taking their first AP class, like AP history is, somewhat common for 10th graders. This is also where they'll take the PSAT or the pre-ACT for the first time. So, I think establishing a relationship with a counselor, ideally their school counselor, they can give you a lot of, feedback and support and what they've seen other students do. They are obviously very busy and it's harder for them to dedicate time like one-on-one. So sometimes a private college counselor can be a great resource too. We do college counseling at AJ. It's a great way to sort of consult about your students' course schedule and their testing plan, which leads into my next support point, which is craft a testing plan in 10th grade. Planning early is really helpful. Again, a counselor can help with this. Any test prep tutor at AJ can help you put together a testing plan. It might include the PSAT, SAT, ACT, doing retakes, like when it makes sense to do those, and AP exam prep. On the next slide, I'll sort of lay out like a schedule for junior and senior year, which is when a lot of the testing happens. But yeah, it's definitely good to start thinking about it early. For 11th grade, maybe multiple AP classes, honors classes. A lot of students are taking the SAT and ACT that year for the first time. So, I would strongly recommend register for the SAT, ACT dates early. The tests definitely do fill up. I've had students drive long distances to take tests, even drive out of state to take like a last minute test. So yeah, sign up early so you can get a spot close to where you live. AJ usually sends out like a constant contact email when the test registration opens. So look out for that. You want to register as soon as you can. And then, yeah, I definitely want to bring up encourage sleep and stress reduction. It seems to me from, working with high school students for a lot of years that junior year tends to be the peak stress, year for a lot of high school students. I think that's for a lot of reasons. They're sort of starting to become self-aware, thinking about, hey, what's my future after high school? They're comparing themselves a lot, right, to their peers. And a lot of these Bay Area schools are very high achieving. And so they're comparing themselves to some of the best students in the country, and it can be kind of stressful and overwhelming. So, how can you help? All the support you provide already, of course, giving some perspective on what's going to happen after high school. What can you do now to set yourself up? Making space for friends and fun, which is, a really important way to balance all the academic stuff and extracurriculars they're doing. It might be necessary to cut back on some of the lower priority activities. So, talk to your counselor about what it makes sense for them to cut back on if they need to. And then 12th grade, you made it. They made it. Nice job. So I would, they're retaking the SAT, college apps are due, all that stuff. I would suggest calendaring out important dates. Where are the deadlines, right, for the tests and their application deadlines? Helping to break the college apps into manageable chunks, setting sub goals along the way can be really helpful. Same thing that we do with study skills tutoring. And yeah, visiting colleges if you haven't done it yet, and calendaring out special senior year events to look forward to. And then, finally, celebrating how far they've come, reflecting back on, their journey as students, and hold them tightly, and then set them free. Okay, so that was most of my spiel. On this last slide, we've got sort of a calendar for junior and senior year. Not that they're going to do all of these things, but here are some of the important dates. There are many different ways to approach a prep plan. like we've said, each student is different, and the colleges they're applying to will have different requirements. Some students might want like a more minimal approach, maybe just taking the SAT and ACT once during the spring of their junior year. Others might want a more intensive approach, taking multiple retakes to maximize their scores. Some students might not need to take the SAT or ACT at all, depending on the schools they're applying to and the advice that you get from their college counselor. But you can see that junior year is like kind of a bear, which is why I always recommend that, families start like the summer before junior year to build a foundation of test taking skills with some PSAT prep and getting ahead on AP and honors classes that they'll take in the fall. Just because, junior year is so busy, especially if they're in sports, it can get really difficult to schedule, test prep and to make it to all the practice tests, which are typically on weekends. If they're like in a travel sports club or something, it can get pretty tough. So the more you can do the summer before, the better. You'll notice like spring semester, junior year, there's a lot going on. March, April, May, June, every month or something. For that reason, some students will choose to take their first SAT or ACT in the fall of junior year. Maybe they're busy with sports in the spring. That can totally work, provided they have like the necessary math background. I typically recommend taking the first SAT in March or the first ACT in April, just so they have more math and reading under their belt. But again, it's going to be different for each student. And then, I guess I mentioned sports schedules. It's hard to squeeze in practice tests. I used to be a coach. I was a gymnastics coach for many years. I wanted my students in the gym as much as possible. Now I'm on the tutoring side and I want them, preparing for tests as much as possible. So there's like a balance there, right? And your job as the parent is to sort of help them balance that and, make sure they're not getting too overloaded. Obviously, a counselor, test prep tutor can be a great resource as well as you put together a prep plan for your student. But yeah, the point is, plan ahead so that you can minimize anxiety on your part and the student's part and maximize their outcomes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, everybody. We'll have time for some questions at the end, I think. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dipti, who's going to discuss some ways to support students with study skills.
Hi, everyone. I am the director of our Los Altos office, and I'm really excited to talk to you all. I also do the tutoring of test prep students for their SAT and ACT and beyond as needed, as well as some academic tutoring. But one of the things that we've seen as students come in for academic tutoring is that they have a variety of needs. And so we're going to dig into kind of what we're seeing with different high school students and how we can support them. Because of some of the shaky sort of education that happened over the course of COVID, occasionally we'll have students come in for things like pre-calculus and be missing a chunk of their algebra or geometry knowledge. And so we want to make sure that as students are coming in and trying to do more challenging courses, that we're also supporting them with foundational skills. And part of what one-on-one tutoring lets us do is meet your student where they are and look at what are the prerequisite content pieces that you need in order to succeed in pre-calculus or calculus. And how do we make sure that you're both filling those fundamentals as well as looking ahead so that by the time you learn something in school, it's not your first time. You've looked at it on your own in the book, you've looked at it with a tutor, and then by the time you're seeing it in class, it's your third time, and it's a little bit easier to just understand something so that each time you're looking at it, you're a little bit more comfortable. One of the other things we've had students come in and tell us is that they're really comfortable when they're sitting in class and doing a problem, or really comfortable when sitting next to a tutor and doing a problem. And then they get to a test and they don't have enough time, or something went wrong and they just like their mind goes blank. And part of what we work on with students is how do you develop really strong study skills so that you're not hitting that moment where it's just a test and it feels really different. And so hand in hand with be like content knowledge on your academic classes is really successful time management and executive functioning, so that you have a system of organization, you have a system of calendaring, you know, here's what my routine homework is. There aren't surprises of like, oh, now I have this research paper that I had 2 months to write in my English class, and I'm trying to write it the weekend before, but I've chunked it out. I have mapped out, here is the time I'm putting in like each week, so that I get to that last weekend and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to proofread. And that last weekend feels a lot easier as a result. We've developed a really specific executive functioning program that works with some of our students, both for students who are doing really well, as well as students who are struggling with content or feeling any kind of disruption. And while there are different needs, I think one-on-one tutoring works well because you're able to match students where they are and build into that continuity. Some of the things that we've seen this year as students go back to school is that their courses feel really rigorous. And while they were in distance learning, while their courses were a little easier, their study skills and ability to put together, here is how I learned something, has regressed a little bit. And so hand in hand with like, oh, we're teaching you dimensional analysis as you're learning chemistry, we also want to teach you how to be a better self-advocate and ask your teacher, like, can you give me a syllabus for the year? Can you tell me, like, when is my next test? How do I map out my study plan so that I am breaking down and working a little bit every day and never hitting that moment where I feel really overwhelmed or I feel really out of time? For most of our high school students, what that looks like is a 90-minute tutoring session per subject with a tutor that typically is going to go hand in hand with a set of, here is the assignments that your teacher is expecting outside of school, and here's the support that I think you're going to need as a student. For our younger students, we found that typically an hour of tutoring once a week is the correct pacing of just like, here is the amount of time we can focus. But we've had high school students who benefit from shorter, more frequent chunks of time. And so we've had some students who will choose 1 hour sessions twice a week so that they have shorter touch points to work on their academic skills. As part of our study skills curriculum and as part of digging in addition to just teaching calendaring and organization systems, we also teach study methods. And so we're going to work on a study method together for learning new terms, whether they be in science or in vocabulary or in history. So the method that we're going to use is called the DAP method. And what you want to do is on an index card, on the first side of the index card, you put the term that you are trying to learn. And so the one that we're going to learn together is perspicacious. And what you want to do with that term is think, what is the first association that you have? So you see the word perspicacious. What does it remind you of? What does it mean? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Because that's also likely the first thing that comes to mind when you see it on an exam. On the back of your index card, once you have, here is the word that I'm trying to learn, goes the DAP, the definition of the word, the first association that comes to mind, and a picture that connects it to. So for perspicacious, the first thing that comes to mind for me is perspiration. It looks a little bit like the sweating. It kind of makes you sweat. It's a big word. In this case, the definition of the word is having a keen or sharp mind. And so first side of our index card is perspicacious. On the back, we have a D and it says having a keen or sharp mind. If this is a science term, it may be here is the term and here's where you see it used. The association of that word is the first thing you thought of when you saw it. And so in this case, for me, that is perspiration. and we're just going to build that connection. The picture, and in this case, really the sillier the better. I encourage you to add all of the details to your pictures when possible, because the more effort you put into building these connections, the more easily the neurons in your brain will be able to just recall, here's what the original definition was. And so my connection between someone who has a keen or sharp mind, who is perspiring, is this really lovely picture that I have drawn of Einstein sweating a little bit. And the next time you see the word perspicacious, you'll think perspiration again, because again, like that's what first came to mind. But now instead of just thinking perspiration, you'll also remember, here is this moment with Einstein and sweating, and come back to, okay, how does this sweat connect? Now I have the term and the definition in my mind. If you're learning a new language, if you're learning a term in history, if you're learning a term in science, like we encourage students to build as many connections as they can so that things are easier to recall and not just relying on a rote round of memorization, because that doesn't really stick. And so we have a ton of different varieties of how to take notes, how to build study skills, how do you create your own cheat sheets, like what are things that will teach you how to learn so that every step of the way you are becoming a more independent learner and relying less on these crutches of additional pieces of information. This is one of them that I encourage you all to teach your students right now. It's something I still use and use anytime I'm trying to remember something that is a brand new term. And then I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who will dig in a little bit more to our test prep for high school students.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dipti. Yeah, I really like this approach. I need to work on my art skills if I'm going to be more successful with this approach, but that would be good too. So I can do both those things. Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about a few things here. Firstly, APs, those relate a lot to our academic courses. Almost all of the people who take the AP exams in the spring took academic AP classes the full year, right? That's the way we want to do it. So just to be able to talk through this, the AP exams, as Jan noted, come up in May, right? First couple weeks of May. They're spanned across that. It kind of depends exactly when a student takes it then, what class they're in. So in terms of planning, if your student is taking AP classes this year, especially multiple AP classes, I would highly recommend you just look in to see what the dates of those are. If your student has, back-to-back exams, there's going to be a little bit of a challenge there. If they've got a little bit more time between them, then that's great. So in terms of doing well in the APs, first and foremost, do well in the academic class, right? It's going to be a good setup for those tests. So what are these classes all about, right? Who are good students for these classes? Well, they're students who are going to know most of the previous material, right? If a student is going to take AP Chem, I have several students doing that right now, they really should have some chemistry background. And generally, AP classes are really challenging, right? So those of you who have students in those classes have probably already seen this fall that those classes are going to take some additional time for homework and studying. That being said, classes are set for the school year already, so we're pretty good with that. You're in them. As far as, why are AP courses important? Like, what do we want to do particularly well and really focus in on these classes? Course rigor is a big part of this, right? Especially as, SAT, ACT sorts of things have been a little bit different over the past few years. Making sure that students are in challenging courses is really important so that they can show that not only is their GPA high, but it is high with a challenging course load. So that's kind of on the admissions side of things. After admissions, the results from AP classes can be helpful in terms of helping students get a really strong start in college. So it can help place them into classes that they're really excited about, right? Skip over maybe one or two of those really kind of like base classes. And it could also possibly give them credit for that, right? Either kind of a general credit to help set them up with just a few extra credits so they can register early for classes, or in some cases, if students do well in the exams, maybe they can actually pass out of an intro biology course or an intro English course or something of that sort. Common question that we get in the spring, which is not a question we get so much now, but a question that students start thinking about later sometimes is like, do I actually have to take this exam? And I think it's helpful to think about that now because, we would say it's really good to. And it's helpful to think about that now because then students are going to get, as much as they can done during the course. Highly recommended for them to take these tests. It is not absolutely required. So why would you want to take the AP exam in the spring? Like we just talked about, maybe you can earn college credit for that. And second, demonstrate mastery on a standardized exam, right? You can use this in part to just prove that you can take tests. Tests are an important part of college, of course. It's also just good practice for, taking a semester midterm or semester final in college. So that's some basics there. How to prepare for AP exams. In school, a lot of teachers, most teachers, are going to put together some sort of test preparation plan in their syllabus. Hopefully they'll have maybe a couple weeks in class where they're really just getting ready for the exam and have already taught all the content. It really varies between schools. There have definitely been students I've worked with in the past whose teachers haven't even quite gotten through all the content that's coming up on an AP exam. So a whole different ball game. Definitely good to plan ahead, check in with the teacher about these things, and just make sure that things are staying track during the year. In terms of what students can do kind of at home, by themselves or with friends, there's a lot there too as well. AP Classroom, which is College Board's AP like online resource, really fantastic. They've really boosted that over the past few years. It seems like a lot of schools around here are using that directly. Gives students a lot of extra practice problems that they can work on. Really solid. So if your student's not already doing that as kind of part of their homework from class, definitely encourage them to check it out or see if they can get access through their teacher or school. There are also a number of prep books out there through various publishers that can be solid preps for the exam. Whether students can really get into that prep on their own with just a textbook, it really depends, right? Dipti, Daniel, and I, I'm sure we've all had students who have been really successful with that approach in the past. I've certainly had students as well who I'll say I'm glad we didn't take that approach. I'm glad we took a more directed one-on-one approach, but both can be successful. And then with the tutor, as Dipti was saying, kind of our standard recommendation for academic tutoring is a session once a week of 90 minutes for high schoolers and 1 hour for middle school or elementary school students. We have kind of a standard recommendation for AP exams, which is somewhere between 4 and 8 test prep sessions specific to the AP exam. So this is not necessarily the same thing as academic tutoring during the school year, where the student is working on content and getting ready for academic exams. But here in those sessions farther into the spring, we're really working on the specific type of questions, both multiple choice and the free response, that come up on the exams themselves. So those sessions really include a few things: a pre-prep diagnostic, just to see how things are coming along, right? Super important. As well as going over any content review that's particularly sticky or maybe comes up more on the exam than it does in an academic class, or maybe it's some challenging content that came up in October in an academic class and now definitely needs a reminder in the style of the exam come April before getting ready for May exams. And a lot of, all of the test prep sorts of things that we do later in the year are really honed in on test taking strategies. How are you going to eliminate answers on multiple choice? What are you going to do in terms of like guessing, so to speak, for your response? Just how do you tackle the exam itself, right? And for anything test prep we do offer full mock exams. So a chance for students to come in and actually sit in the office and take a full length test. And we find that to be super essential now. Just to reiterate the point here, planning the school year out is the name of the game at this point. So make a plan, execute the plan, and you're going to be in a good spot. As far as other things coming up, and this would really be relevant, I guess, for all of sophomores, juniors, seniors, thinking about standardized test prep on the SAT, ACT kind of landscape. Just to highlight here at the bottom, we do have an upcoming parent night in, I guess, exactly a month from today on the 17th. And that's going to be with two of our test prep experts, Pat Hennis and Andrew Shore. And they're going to be talking you through, hopefully you can attend that one as well, a lot more detail than we'll be able to cover tonight. Tonight, I just want to give you a few updates, a few basics as far as what to plan on for the PSAT, the SAT, a little bit about the digital SAT that we'll talk about in a second, and then the ACT as well. So in terms of these tests, what is coming up soonest? That's a good way to think about this. The PSAT. PSAT comes up in mid-October. It's either Wednesday, October 11th, or Saturday, October 14th at a lot of the schools around here. It's taken by juniors across the country. A lot of the schools, as you may know, around here have their sophomores take the PSAT as well. And we think that's awesome, right? It's a good chance to get into these sorts of tests in a very low stakes way. PSAT just stands for preliminary SAT. So yeah, just that good first shot. Doesn't count directly for college admissions. It's really just a practice test for the most part. One thing that's going to be great about the PSAT for this fall, it is going to be in a digital format. And the reason that's helpful is because the SAT is going to be in a digital format from March 2024 and on. The SAT is still a paper and pencil test this fall. So the PSAT is a great first chance for students to be able to just see that digital format in a very, very low stakes way. A little bit about the digital SAT. So it is going to be a little bit shorter than the previous one. Previous exam was about 3 hours. ACT is about that same length. Digital SAT is going to be about 2 hours and 14 minutes. I guess that's an about. That's pretty specific. And one thing to note as well is it's going to be a little bit different in terms of the setup. So the test is actually going to adapt a little bit to the student success. So on the English section, for example, there's going to be half of the English section that all students are going to take. It's going to be exactly the same. And then a student is going to either get sent into a less difficult or a more difficult second half of that English section based on how they did in the first half. So that's going to allow College Board, they think, to separate out a little bit better student scores, just get a bit of better measurement for students at every side of the testing score landscape. We don't expect it's going to be particularly tricky for our students to do that. Right? They really just need to sit down and do the best they can on the test all the way through. But we're excited to be able to coach them on that. We have a great digital SAT and digital PSAT program set up. And at the bottom here, just to highlight, it's really the same in terms of content and strategy for the most part as on the current SAT. So not to be scared of this, just to be interested in something slightly new. Right. How do SATs and ACTs fit into the current college admissions process? And a couple of quotes here, as Daniel did earlier, from parents, just general kind of questions. Many colleges have gone test optional. Should I take the tests? Or my child is planning to apply only to UCs, which are currently test blind. They don't even accept test scores at all. Do we need to take the SAT or ACT at all? Broadly, we would encourage students to do this, right? It is not going to be for absolutely everyone out there, but strong test scores can be advantageous in admissions. And perhaps equally importantly, high school students are kind of figuring out what they want to do, right? So they're not going to know exactly which schools they want to apply to immediately. They may change pretty late in the process. We would definitely want them to have all of the tools at hand to be able to apply to whichever schools they want to, whether those be test blind or test optional, or the rare school these days that actually does require test scores. In other notes, English and math, pretty important. These are what the SAT is testing. So, we've had a fair number of students over the past few years here who have ended up, not quite utilizing their test scores for their college admissions, but have been really thankful for the additional work on English and math, just getting better with those super core skills and getting more comfortable with testing, right? Like I mentioned, testing is not unique to high schoolers. There are plenty of tests in college as well. In terms of the calendar, here's a bit of an insight into what's coming up. So the SAT on the left here, right, we got October, we got November, we got December, we got March, we got May. These could all be relevant for juniors. For seniors, they're really finishing up this process right now, right? Maybe they're retaking in October. That's probably about the end of the road for those seniors. For the ACT, kind of similar, right? Spanned across the year. The basic that we would want students to know for this, and again, there'll be more in a month at that parent night specifically about testing plans. We really want students to be done with a full round of testing by the end of their junior year. So if student is taking the SAT for the first time in March or the ACT for the first time in April or something around that, a little bit earlier, a little bit later, that's awesome and is going to give time and availability to do a retake, focus on APs. There's plenty of stuff to do in the process, as Daniel pointed out. Other things. So two other things that we're really excited about being able to do at AJ. The first is for credit coursework, right? So if students are, let's say they didn't do so hot in a course last year, we can help them make that course up for credit, maybe improve a grade there. Maybe they dropped a course or thinking about dropping a course right now. We can help them do that for credit. And we can do that in a one-on-one setup where students can move at their own pace, but be able to put that on their transcript. So that's really awesome. We have a bunch of different classes that we can do this with. So one of the other common things that we've seen with students who are interested in for credit work is they can add on a course that they can't normally take at their high school. Maybe that's like AP Psychology, and they're just really earnestly interested in that. Maybe it's AP Microeconomics, right? These are something that are not offered at all schools, but can be definite just interest for students, as well as add to that course rigor that they can show on their college admissions. Other nice thing about the for credit coursework at AJ, it is on a rolling basis. So students can really start anytime. We certainly don't encourage cramming these kind of courses. That's really tricky. But if a student wants to start now and stretch it over the course up till May to take the AP exam after that, we think that's great. If a student is interested in doing it over the full course of the summer, we think that's awesome too. So there's a plan out there that can really work. And then college counseling, we find this to be a really important part of the process for students. As Daniel mentioned, there are a lot of college counselors available at local schools, and they can be extraordinarily knowledgeable about what that school is doing and colleges and finding that balance for students and helping them select the right spots. That's all fantastic. They can also be pretty busy sometimes and might not have a detailed time to be able to sit down and create a customized plan. So we're really excited to be able to offer college counseling services as well. We've got a number of people who have college counseling credentials and are really excited about working with those students to create that customized plan, possibly even starting pretty early. I guess I listed the years in opposite order here. 12th graders might be interested in college counseling for help right now with essays or kind of the study skills side of it, just getting stuff done by the due dates, right? It's honestly a really important part of the process. 11th graders, same kind of thing, but maybe it's a little bit more about school choice, right? And then 9th and 10th graders, we can chat with them every now and then about the classes they're taking and extracurriculars that they're doing and that sort of thing. Awesome. Alrighty, so that should give you a pretty good sense for what's happening in the school year. Things to pay attention to, things to focus on. We wanted to open it up to a little bit of a Q&A. So if anyone would like to simply unmute themselves and ask a question, that's great. Or if you want to drop a note in the chat, then we can have that go as well. So we'll give a couple minutes here for people to contribute a question. We've also got a couple questions that we figured people would have. Yes, okay, so Min has asked, which test is used for a National Merit Scholarship qualification? That is the PSAT. Yeah, so that is one part of the PSAT for students who are doing extraordinarily well. In California, it's just really competitive, but the PSAT is specific for that. PSAT is not for college admissions, though.
One specific note, it's the PSAT for your junior year.
Thank you, Dippy. Yep. Other questions people are having? Well, people are putting some things in the chat here, talking a little bit more about the PSAT. As you know, we collected some notes on questions that people would have. So thinking just a little bit about PSAT prep, right? Like what can we do over the course of the next month to be ready for this test? Generally, we would recommend about 3 to 4 sessions. It's not a lot. It's really just a first foray into to test prep. So the basics of that, we would help students practice with the core English content, some grammar, some reading comprehension practice, some core math content. And then really getting in a couple of practice tests to be able to a little bit rinse and repeat what that testing situation is going to be like. We also are excited to coach students on some basic test taking strategies with that, of course. Nadine here asks, who do I connect with at the Los Gatos location to do SAT, ACT test prep for my senior? So there are a few ways you could go with that. We do have a Los Gatos director. You could look up on our website. Many of our offices do have an office director there. Broadly though, thank you, Daniel. Broadly though, we're all under the same umbrella. So, if you want to talk to Daniel or Dipti, or you want to talk to me, we're happy to talk about tutors at any one of our locations. Also, if you just call into our main phone line, we've got an awesome client services team that knows our tutoring team really well and knows all about creating these testing plans. Other questions on the way through? Well, people are putting a little bit more in the chat. Other thing that came up this time of year on the academic side, one thing we're doing right now with our students is creating what we call academic plans. So we do this after a couple of sessions with the student. Once we get to know them a little bit, their situation a little bit. Daniel and Dipti, would you each be comfortable talking through just an academic plan that you have for a student right now and kind of how you formulated that, talking with them and talking with their parent?
Yeah, so I have an AP physics student who I'm working with, who I got to see last year. And getting to work with her for multiple years means that I've gotten to see, here's how she's progressed from last year to this year. And one of the things that we are working on together is refining her approach to problem solving. So when she sees a really complex problem, like here is the process that she's going to be using to approach, regardless of what the problem is, here is how to break it down. And so we have an acronym called GOPAC, which means list out all the givens, figure out your objective, think about the pathway between your givens and your objective, solve and find the answer, and check to make sure it's reasonable. And as we go through the course of the year, I've seen her become more comfortable. And so she's no longer coming to me with I don't quite know how to approach a problem. She's like, okay, here's what my givens are. Here's my objective. Here's the piece of the problem I'm missing. And so she's gotten to that place. Our academic plan together involves working on more AP level questions so that she is taking the entire school year and practicing what she's going to see on an exam in May. And she doesn't hit March or April and start to get that level of challenge, but we're thinking about it throughout the year.
Very cool. Yeah, I love it, Tiffany. Daniel?
Yeah, the student who jumped into mind is a chemistry honor student I have at Saratoga High right now, which is a really, really challenging class. And so for her, it's sort of keeping up with the pace of the course. So we're doing a lot of the study skill stuff that Dipti mentioned. We're printing out her lecture slides before each class, doing as much like preview of the material as we can, so that by the time she gets to class, she's seen a lot of it before. She's not like busy taking notes and missing what the teacher's saying. So providing students with like a framework for what they're going to learn can really be helpful for them actually learning it. And then the other thing with this particular student is, very bright kid. When she's showing work, it kind of like goes all over the page. So I'm setting her up with like a graphic organizer, just like a simple way to compartmentalize her paper so that she's, showing her work neatly so that she can, find her own mistakes. I want her to have, agency in the process to be able to know if her answers are right and wrong. So yeah, those are a couple things we're working on.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I have a few students who are largely similar. We're doing a lot of preview in sessions. It's not necessarily intentional each and every single session, but we kind of split it up into half. Maybe the student, if they feel comfortable with the material, largely is teaching back to me what they're currently working on in class, and that's a great way for us as tutors to be able to check that the student actually understands what they think they understand. It's really easy for any of us to think that we understand more than we do. So we get to do kind of a double check there. We'll work on some extra challenge practice problems, and we'll probably spend half the session previewing what's coming next. So as Daniel mentioned as well, having access to a student's online materials, I shouldn't say access to, but like knowing how those are arranged. Can be incredibly helpful for students at this time of year because students have a lot online these days. They probably have some practice materials. They definitely have some slideshows. They maybe have an online textbook that they can work extra practice problems from. All super, super helpful. And then one thing that I always like to do with my sessions, and a lot of our tutors like to do as well, is just take the first few minutes of a session and check in on what happened recently, right? So, how did that quiz go last week? 15 out of 17. All right, sounds pretty good. Tell me about the couple points that you missed. We'll check in on that. What did you notice while you were taking it? Did you run out of time? Was it content that you were struggling with? Did you just kind of freeze in the moment and we need to work a little bit on problem solving? And it could be any one or multiple of those. So figuring that out from the tutor standpoint, incredibly helpful.
Yeah, just to jump on that, like there's so many digital resources that students have, but yeah, like I really like to have them using a physical textbook and printing stuff out whenever possible. And I just like make the students go on the whiteboard and work out problems, which they usually enjoy doing. Just getting hands-on is really helpful.
Agreed. People still love whiteboards, which I appreciate. All right. Any other questions we're running into? Anybody who would like to ask something, just unmute yourself, go for it. Or if you want to drop something in the chat, that's great too. All right. Sounds like we got nothing specific coming in. We tried to tailor our presentation to the questions that you asked in your online responses. So I'm going to take it that we've covered the most of those at least. Again, if you do want to get in touch with someone at AJ, there's a few good places to go. You could contact Dipti, Daniel, or me directly. There's our info. Our extensions, just dial our main line and dial that or ask for our name. And then all of our email addresses at AJ are pretty simplistic, just first name, last name at ajtutoring.com. And of course, we've got our main line here. Again, we've got a fantastic client services team that would love to talk with you, learn a little bit more about your students, and make a suggestion for how to help them succeed this year. Awesome. Alrighty, well, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get things shut down here. So I'm going to stop our video recording and then we will say good night to you all.